Telltale's The Walking Dead is famous for its excellent writing, complex and realistic characters, and difficult decisions which allow the player to be immersed in the apocalyptic setting. These attributes are present throughout the majority of the series to varying degrees. However, one episode stands out among the rest as what I believe to be the greatest episode in the history of The Walking Dead. Episode 2, Starved for Help, excels in every regard, with immersive storytelling, complex and hard choices that weigh on the player's conscience, and masterful incorporation of tension and horror, intertwined with the classic character drama that the series is known for. The primary factor in what makes this the best episode in the series is how it portrays the conflict of survival versus morality. While the whole series plays on this conflict, I believe that this episode displays it in the most nuanced and complex way in the whole series. The episode begins in autumn. The autumn trees are symbolic of change and decay, reflective of the society and world 3 months into the apocalypse. Amidst this change, the group is struggling to hold on, with food and supplies running low. In our opening sequence, we are introduced to a new character, Mark, who is hunting with Lee, who has been granted his very own murder jacket. The hunting trip introduces us to the driving force of this episode, food. Starvation is a very underrepresented topic in apocalypse media, with most stories focusing on the threat of zombies or other humans. However, this group's struggle to find food grounds the world in reality a lot more. Lee and Mark discuss that they've been surviving off of Mark's stash of food from the Air Force Base, mentioning that if Mark hadn't opened the door to the group, he would probably be food by now. This episode is ripe with foreshadowing, with this statement alluding to a dark fate for Mark later in the episode. In Mark and Lee's conversation, we are also notified of the main conflict within the group, being Kenny and Lily's differing ideas on how to lead the group. This episode is great at gradually pushing the player out of their comfort zone by allowing them to stay neutral at the start. However, as tensions rise, Lee is forced to choose which side he wants to be on. Further foreshadowing is evident with Mark mentioning that despite the lack of food, Larry is a walking pile driver and he wouldn't want to be stuck in a room with him. Suddenly, Lee and Mark hear screaming and rush to the scene, finding Kenny with a high school teacher caught in a bear trap and 2 students trying to help him out of it. The students are initially distrustful of Lee, Mark, and Kenny, thinking that they could be raiders who attacked their camp. While the raiders do attack Mark and Lee later in the episode, they serve as a red herring main threat, the real main threat being revealed to us in a shocking twist later in the episode. The bear trap has been altered to have no release latch, meaning that someone deliberately designed this without the intent of just hunting animals. However, as the player has just been told about the bandits, we can assume for now that it was them. As there is no way to cut the teacher free from the trap, we have to choose whether to leave him to die or to cut his leg off. This choice tests whether the player is willing to take action and responsibility to help other people at the risk of their own group, as cutting his leg off means that you could potentially be responsible for killing him yourself, and if he somehow survives and we patch him up, we're using our own medical supplies to save someone who is not part of our group. Taking these costs into account, it is fairly reasonable if the player chooses to leave the teacher behind, as saving him puts everyone at risk and wastes the group's supplies. However, most players, including myself, chose the morally correct option and tried to save him by cutting his leg. This choice introduces us to the core principle behind a lot of the choices we will have to make in this episode: morality versus survival. Are you willing to help others if it means risking your own survival? Is it considered selfish to protect yourself and your group if it means letting others suffer and die? Are you strong enough to make those decisions, or will you simply stand aside and let others make that choice for you, risking the potential of them making the wrong choice? Telltale does a fantastic job of making the player feel the weight of their decisions, in how characters react to their choices and holding them accountable. We get back to the group, and if you had chosen to save the man by chopping off his leg, Kartra will try and patch him up, prompting an argument and forcing the player into the midst of a conflict between Kenny and Lily. Lily is against us bringing more people into the group, as we are barely surviving as it is, with Larry chiming in to say that we should have left him to die. Lily is also bearing the weight of distributing the rations, as there is not enough, causing arguments and people to think that she is unfair. From this, we can gather that Lily and Larry lean more towards the survivalist side. Carly, Mark, and others are more moral people. Kenny's only real priority is the survival of his family, however he is against Lily's way of running things. Our next big choice is handing out the food, as Lily forces us to do it out of frustration. This is the game's way of allowing us to choose our favourites and create alliances, as there is not enough food for everyone. As the player, we want to appease everyone, however we aren't granted that ability, and we have to take accountability for who we allow to suffer in favour of others, immersing us in the difficulty of being a leader in an apocalyptic world, as characters reprimand us for not choosing them, while others are grateful or understanding. The reactions of each character subtly show us more about them, such as how Carly understands how hard it must be after being granted this responsibility and chooses not to have food, asking us to eat instead, and how Kenny instinctively asks whether his family and the kids have eaten first. This helps us as the player connect more with the characters of the game, as they feel real, with real priorities and motivations. After this, we soon find out that the teacher has died from blood loss, and suddenly turns into a walker and attacks Karcher and Lee. The group gets mad at the surviving school student Ben, thinking that he didn't tell them the teacher was bitten. However, we get a shocking reveal from Ben, that you turn into a walker no matter what. In my opinion, this reveal is done a lot better than the show, as it shocks the player and makes them feel regretful for trying to save the teacher when it served as a large threat to the group, connecting once again to the idea of survival versus morality. The group is suddenly approached by two strangers looking to trade supplies in exchange for gas, as gas powers the generators for their electric fence that protects their dairy farm. At first glance, the group is distrustful, however when you're desperate, you don't have much choice. The two strangers, Andy and Danny St. John, present a salvation one could only dream of in the apocalypse, a farm with food and supplies and a protective fence that keeps out walkers. Sounding too good to be true, we are able to investigate the dairy and see whether it is a trap or not. On the way there, we are reminded of the looming threat of the bandits, increasing our hope that this dairy is what it seems for the sake of our safety. Once we arrive at the dairy, we meet Brenda St. John and get to see the secure electric fence is very real. The St. Johns are very friendly, but perhaps too friendly for the apocalypse. We are even offered some free food as a gift. Something feels off about the place, whether it be the overly friendly nature of the St. John's, comparable to that of a restaurant server putting on a fake customer service tone, or maybe the character designs look slightly off, or uncanny. Telltale intentionally designed it this way, however we have to hope that maybe we are wrong, or we are being too distrustful, as we don't have many other options if we want to survive. We also don't want to be too overly distrustful or hostile, as we may lose our chance at a safe place to stay for our group. There is even a swing which we can fix up for Clementine and Duck, motivating us further to make this work. After speaking with the St. John's and finding out more about the dairy, Lee and Mark offer to help clear the walkers off the electric fence, in an attempt to show that we can pull our weight around the dairy. While clearing the fence of walkers, Lee and Mark hop onto the other side to try and push the fence back in place, but suddenly the fence turns on. Why would the St. John's turn the fence on while we were out here clearing it? This is an obvious red flag, but before we can think too much of it, Mark gets hit with an arrow from the bandits and we have to try and escape. Maybe the St. John's saw the bandits and turned the fence on, not knowing that we hopped over the other side. We escape the bandits and head back to the dairy, but now Mark is injured. Our group also arrives and conflict ensues regarding the safety of the dairy now that we know about the bandits. St. John's made a deal with them, where if they gave the bandits food, they wouldn't attack them, but it seems like the deal has gone bad. Telltale continues to present the bandits as this looming threat, building them up as the main villain of this episode, serving as a red herring for what's to come. We get to bond further with Clementine on the swing, reinforcing the idea that this can be a safe place for our group and making us hope that it all works out. Clementine even states that it reminds her of how the world was before, giving the player hope that maybe this can be a safe haven away from the horrors of the apocalypse, and a restoration of normalcy for our characters. Danny and Lee head out to scout the bandit camp and find it empty. There are boxes in the camp from the dairy, which Lee mentions, causing Danny to look troubled before coming up with an excuse. This is another clear red flag that something isn't right. We also find a video camera, but the battery is dead, to which Danny replies,
"Oh, good."
This response can be perceived as sarcastic, but we can clearly tell that something is up and Danny is hiding something. We find Clementine's hat, which was missing earlier in the episode, in one of the tents. At this point, the player is full of confusion. How did her hat get here? What is even going on? Before we can inquire more, we are interrupted by a crazy woman aiming a crossbow at us. She says that we stole her daughter from her, making us initially think that Danny might have kidnapped her daughter. However, when we bring up Clementine's hat, she says that we stole Clem from her, making her an unreliable narrator in this situation. We are granted the option to shoot her, which would be optimal for our immediate survival, however would be immoral, and could also prevent us from learning more info that could help us survive further along. She says that they have something in mind for our group, but before she can spill it, Danny shoots her, claiming that it was a
Clean shot though, right through the forehead. That's good shooting right there. Still, what a waste.
This interaction is intentionally misleading, as the woman makes it unclear whether she is talking about the bandits or the St. John's, and her saying that Clem was her daughter makes it hard for us to believe whether she was just crazy or telling the truth, or both. Regardless, Danny's reaction gives us more to be suspicious about, as he clearly has some screws loose. An argument can be made at this point that he was simply saving us from being shot, but with all the clues that we've been given so far, we can gather that she was going to say something which Danny didn't want us to hear. Once we arrive back at the dairy, conflict between Lily and Kenny continues. We meet our group back at the barn and have a look around.
What's this thing?
Daddy said it's called a salt lick.
Yeah, but don't lick it. It's gross.
Did you lick it?
I don't know.
Lee finds a locked door in the barn, to which Kenny says he is suspicious of. Kenny and Lee decide for the safety of the group that they need to see if the St. John's are hiding something behind the door, so they devise a plan to see what's inside. After opening the door, we can see a room full of blood, sores, and traps. One of the traps being a bear trap, just like the one we saw the teacher trapped in at the start of the episode. Our group has gone to dinner, and Andy St. John comes up behind us and explains that they use it for preparing animals that they've hunted for food, but we can clearly see something is up. While the group is at the dinner table, we go investigate the house, as we can tell something is wrong. Upstairs, it appears the bedroom is empty, with blood stains on the floor. We turn on a light that shines from a room, hidden behind a bookcase. After we move the bookcase, we find something that confirms our suspicions. Telltale turns the plot on its head with a horrifying twist. The St. John's are cannibals and plan to eat our group, starting with Mark. Telltale's use of horror with this concept is expertly written, as it subverts the audience's expectations for the zombie genre, with players expecting walkers to be the people-eating threat, only to find out the real horror is our own kind. Connecting this to the idea of survival over morality, we can observe that the St. John's have totally shelved morality in exchange for survival by stooping down to the level of the very monsters that cause the apocalypse, eating people just as they do. After telling the group, Lee is knocked out and put in a meat locker with Clem, Lily, Larry, and Kenny. While trying to find a way out, Larry has a heart attack and falls unconscious. Instinctively, Lily rushes to try and revive him. However, Kenny reminds us of what could happen if Larry turns out to be dead. If Larry is dead and he turns into a walker, it's going to put everyone at risk. However, we don't know for sure whether he is still alive or not. This is where I believe we get Telltale's most interesting choice in the whole series. Do we help Kenny kill Larry to prevent him from turning, or do we help Lily save her father, knowing that he could potentially turn and kill us? Survival versus morality. This is essentially Telltale's implication of the trolley problem, where a trolley is headed towards 4 people, but you have the choice to pull a lever and direct it towards one person, saving the 4 people while making you directly responsible for the one person's death. However, it is a bit more complex than that in this context, as we are not 100% sure that Larry is dead. If we break down this choice, we can view our options for the survival-based choice and for the morality-based choice. If you choose to kill Larry, it means that Kenny is not alone in his effort to protect the group, showing how you're willing to step up and not force a difficult decision onto someone else. Larry also stated that he would be the first to kill you if you were bitten, as well as advocating to kill Duck when he thought he was bitten in the drugstore, so it is a taste of his own medicine in that regard. Killing Larry will result in Clem being freaked out, however, as well as Lily being mortified, which isn't good in the long run, considering Lily is one of the people in our group with the most power. If you choose not to kill Larry and instead try to revive him, Kenny will drop the salt lick on Larry's head, which he is not happy about doing. He gets mad due to the fact that he believes that was the only option if we wanted to survive. You forced him not only to be alone in making that decision, but to be hated for it, therefore making him think that you aren't willing to do what it takes to survive, and instead only care about being perceived as a good person. Telltale's reflection of survival versus morality is displayed in full through this choice, and the ramifications of your priorities are thrown back in your face by the characters who oppose your ideals, making you feel the weight of your choice. It is even more uncomfortable knowing that the only way you can get out of the meat locker is to unscrew the vent by looting Larry's pockets for coins, which Lily isn't very fond of. After sending Clem to the other side of the vent to open the door for us, we find ourselves back in the barn's hidden room, which we now know was used to cut up people. Telltale lets us pick which weapon we want to use to defend ourselves from this room. Lee and Kenny sneak up to Danny, who gets to jump on us. Kenny won't help you out if you chose to save Larry, with Lily saving your life instead, but he helps you if you choose to side with him, showing that he is selfish in that regard. With Kenny running to go find his family, you were given the choice to kill or spare Danny. If you choose not to kill him, which can be considered the morally correct choice, as he can't come after you anymore being trapped in a bear trap, then you can just move on. However, I personally killed him. Clem will see you do this and will be scared of you if you do so. Lee will then go and save Katja from Brenda St. John and then get in a fight with Andy St. John, where Lily will help or be a bystander in your fight, depending on whether you killed Larry. Upon defeating Andy, you are given the choice to go back and kill him or simply leave with the group. Personally, I had to put the murder jacket to good use and made sure he couldn't come back after us. However, Clementine also sees us do this, which is bad for the player as it damages our connection with her as a role model. However, this can also teach her that we need to prioritize survival in some cases. On our way back to the motor inn, Clem asks us whether we had to kill those men. Telltale allows us to give our reasoning as to why we did it, allowing us to immerse ourselves as Lee and teach Clem as if she was our own adopted daughter. This confronts us with our own reasoning behind our actions and causes us to reflect on whether we made the right choice, which is the kind of storytelling that Telltale really nails. We soon come across a car with its lights still on and the door still open, so we go investigate. Upon our investigation, we find that the car is full of supplies such as water, food, and clothing, supplies which could help our group survive, especially since the dairy was a lost cause. Kenny instinctively wants to take the supplies for our group as it ensures survival for his family. However, Lily states that these supplies could obviously belong to someone, and it wouldn't be right to just take them. Clementine is also opposed to the idea, as the person who owns the supplies could still be here. This is another implementation of survival versus morality by Telltale, as if we take this stuff, it increases our chances of survival. However, it is immoral, as it could still belong to somebody. If you choose to take the supplies, Clem gets a hoodie to keep her warm. If you choose not to take the supplies, the rest of the group apart from you and Clem will still take the supplies, and Clem doesn't get the hoodie. Carly gives us some batteries for our camcorder, and we get to see some more details about what happened with the woman Danny killed earlier, leaving the player shocked and disturbed. Upon final analysis of this episode, it is clear that Telltale expertly weaved the idea of survival versus morality throughout the episode, and allowed the player to decide what context they wish to prioritize surviving or being a good person, making it clear that it isn't easy to stay a good person if you wish to survive through an apocalypse. It also holds a mirror up to the player and makes them reflect on whether or not they made the right choice, through having supporting characters sit on either side of the spectrum to either support or oppose your choices. To quote American author Harper Lee, "The book to read is not the one that thinks for you, but the one that makes you think." This quote perfectly encapsulates what sets Telltale's The Walking Dead apart from other games, especially in the zombie genre, as many zombie titles simply have the player thoughtlessly mowing down hordes, while The Walking Dead, especially episode 2, confronts the player with the reality of the apocalypse, and whether or not they are willing to set their morals aside if it ensures their survival. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, as I am trying to hit my goal of 100 subs, and it helps me put out more videos like this one. See you guys in the next one.